Steeler fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, with you for another riveting episode of the Steelers preview as the Steelers prepare for Week 10, their ninth football game of the 2019 regular season. They're going to host the Los Angeles Rams this Sunday at 4:25 Eastern Time. Our Dave Schofield will be there. We'll talk about that in a second. But let me introduce the other two members of the triumphant trio. Let's get to Brian Anthony Davis. How's it going, Brian?
It is going awesome. I'm feeling good. I'm back, baby.
He's got his Chris Kimoyatu jersey on. He's waving his towel. I love it. There you go. Dave Schofield. How's it going?
It's not Chris Kimoyatu. Dave said it before. And he's wrong, too. It's not Kelvin Beachum. It's Brendan Stye.
Dave Schofield, welcome to the show. How's it going?
It's going. Just contemplating life here recently. Had a friend of mine pass away suddenly yesterday. So my advice to you guys is hug your family. You never know how long you got.
Very good. That's a stark reminder of that, but it's true. Good words. Not to change the subject, but this is a football show, and we're going to talk about football. Here's a question I want to get started off before we go to Around the Horn. I was driving home from work today. I was listening to sports talk radio, as I always do, and they were talking about Thursday Night Football, and a lot of fans were calling in, and they were griping and moaning how they hate it, blah, blah, blah. Some people called in and said they loved it, that it was like a great break from the 3 days without it. So you have Monday Night Football, you get a couple days off, and then you get another game on Thursday. I guess my quick question for you guys, and I don't think I've ever asked you this question, is what are your thoughts on Thursday Night Football? Love it, hate it, indifferent? I have my thoughts, but I want to hear yours first. Brian, we'll start with you.
You know what? I wish the matchups were better. They spend too much time making sure every single team gets in one. I love the fact that football's on any night. So I really have no problem with it. After this podcast, I'm going to go turn it on. So I'm for it.
Okay, so you like it. You wish the matchups were better. Like tonight's not a bad game. Chargers, Raiders. I mean, that's not a bad one. I mean, it's an AFC West game that has implications, but okay. What about you, Dave? What do you think?
I can't decide if I love that I hate it or that I hate that I love it, because it's one of those things. There's parts of it that are great and parts of it that are not. A few years ago, I was keeping stats and I like to spit them out. It's gone away from this some, but basically first year coaches had no chance on Thursday Night Football. The only time, pretty sure it was 3 seasons ago, the only time there was a first year coach that won all season was when 2 of them were paired against each other, because they just aren't there to have their team ready on that short of notice.
Is that still true, by the way? Like, is that still pretty?
It's kind of fallen off a little bit with that,
because who do the Steelers play on Thursday Night Football?
I know. I was trust me. I was going to talk about that when we're getting to it.
Okay.
And those were just stats I was keeping on my own before I was even associated with Behind the Steel Curtain, because it was because I remember it was the last year I kept track of this. The first year coach with his team that won it was with Rex Ryan in Buffalo, going up against, I think it was Todd Bowles was the first year coach at the Jets. So that was the year I was looking at. And that's the only time a first year coach with their team. And I already said advantage Ryan because he wasn't a first year coach. It's tough with the preparation. It's tough with the player turnaround. So from those kind of things, from an NFL standpoint and a player standpoint and a preparation standpoint, I hate it. When it comes to, I only have a 2-day gap at most from when there's going to be NFL football on, I love it. So it kind of keeps it to where it's always there. You can't forget about it. It's always in the front of your mind. You don't have that far to wait until the next game. So from a fan standpoint, I like that. I still think they could solve all these problems by giving the team an extra bye, and their second bye is always the week before their Thursday night game. I think that would make me love that I love it more than anything.
I don't mind Thursday Night Football when the Steelers play it in the game. I hate it. I always remember the game. Was it 2016, guys, where Ben Roethlisberger went down in St. Louis against the Rams, and Michael Vick had to come into the game. That was when the field was set on fire in pre-games. pregame celebration.
That was a Sunday game.
Right, but then that following week they played the Ravens on Thursday Night Football,
and that was the Scobie debacle.
Yes, but Michael Vick had literally like one walkthrough to get ready for the game. Like he was just signed not too long ago, and then one walkthrough. I said that aspect I hate, like you said, Dave. I hate that they put division games in these slots, though. Like I hate it. And they're doing it tonight. They're going to do it next week when the Steelers travel to play the Browns on Thursday Night Football. To me, division games are so important. To put them on a short week like that, I just feel like it takes away from the importance of the division matchup. I mean, there's so many different games you could choose from to put into that slot. I know they're looking at proximity and who's traveled and who hasn't traveled and things like that. But ultimately, I hate that they're putting these division games. I know why. They want viewers, but at the same time, it just drives me nuts.
There's two other reasons behind that as well. One, because they give everybody a Thursday night game, that's easier. Those are easier matchups in order to move those games in and out. Just hey, if you give it's going to be like the Ravens and Bengals for one, and the Steelers and Browns, boom, then that's just easy way to keep it not too much crossover. But the other reason is that I heard at one point that I can't remember where someone tried to quote up, is that they liked giving you a familiar opponent. So your preparation might not, because think about it. If the Steelers were playing the Rams on Thursday Night Football, they never play the Rams. They don't know anything about NFC West. So that would be a little bit tougher preparation. But I don't know if that's really worth it.
Yeah. Just a random topic off the top of my head that I thought would be interesting to bring up, get your guys' take on that. And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, tomorrow or next episode for the Steelers preview as the Steelers are on Thursday Night Football. But Brian, let's start with you around the horn. So if you're a first-time listener, what this is we all take a topic that's Steelers related, and we basically, hey, what about, this, that, the other, anything that struck your fancy this week, Brian?
Well, yeah, it has, because we've gone through a shift now with the Baltimore Ravens, and the division was something that the Steelers were really focusing on. Well, actually, Steeler Nation was focusing on a whole heck of a lot more of the fact that got to catch the Ravens. But a lot of people don't really realize that in the past few weeks, they've jumped up so much in the AFC, going from 1-4 to 4-4. They are now the 7th seed. So with being the 7th seed, right now, public enemy number 1 and 2 are surprising ones. Because right now, you're scoreboard watching, if you're a Steeler fan, the Buffalo Bills and the Indianapolis Colts. Those are the two teams that you are directly behind at this point, and you have head-to-head games with both of them. Now, you came out on top against the Indianapolis Colts last week, so that's an instant tiebreaker. Right away, you're just one game behind the Colts, and you're looking at the Bills with a 6-2 record, with a very tough schedule up ahead, and a chance to play them on December 15th, with a chance to go head-to-head, win that head-to-head battle against them and get that tiebreaker. So suddenly the Steelers are looking a whole lot closer in the driver's seat. But one thing we cannot forget, and every time I go ahead and write something about the playoff race and the teams to go ahead and look at, I hear one thing over and over, whether it be in the comments, whether it be the chat rooms: the Steelers have to win first. They have to focus on their winning. And we know it's not a given, but you also have to look outside the box to see what happens after you win, with that winning being the number one goal, fellas.
Very good. I mean, Dave kind of penned an article about that this week on the website about how they're almost close to controlling their own destiny, which is remarkable. They were
after being 0-3
and 1-4. I mean,
yeah,
it's remarkable.
That's
great.
a fantastic idea. If I was a team player, I would have read that article.
But he's not. He doesn't listen to anything. He doesn't
read. A lot of traffic on the site.
He did.
So
that
was one. Yeah, but along with that is, if you look at it, I don't know how the tiebreaker would go with the Texans right now. But the Texans have 3 losses, the Colts have 3 losses, and they play each other one more time. So one of those two teams is guaranteed to have as many losses on the season as the Steelers if everybody else wins out all their games, which of course we know that's crazy, that not everyone's going to win all their games.
Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, if there's 2 AFC teams that are tied and they're non-divisional opponents, what is the first tiebreaker? Is it division record or conference record?
Conference record.
Yes. So in other words, if you're saying if it was the Steelers
and the
Texans who didn't play each other,
right?
So yes, then it would go because the division record doesn't matter because they're not in the same division.
Correct.
So yeah, it would go to conference record.
And that'll play into the headline. That'll play into the headline of this episode that we'll get to in a second.
Absolutely.
Because losing this game doesn't hurt your conference record.
Don't kill the tease, Dave.
Yeah, Dave. Time out, Dave. Oh my gosh, I'm getting the death stare.
Battery's
frozen. I was trying to act like I was frozen and it didn't work. You got me smiling.
All right, Dave, go ahead.
I can't hear you guys. I'm going to mention this again because I'm not sure if it was this show or Stat Geek, which one he tunes into, but thank you, Coach Randy Fiechner, for listening to the show and listening to what I said last week, because when it came to that personnel grouping that I was having a problem with, where they brought in Zach Banner with a fullback, another tight end, and Johnny Holden as the wide receiver, they ran it on the first play of the second drive this past week. The only difference was obviously it was not James Conner. It was one Trey Edmonds. And I said, you can't just do the same thing. The defense is flying to Roosevelt Nix. You can't just run the same play and run the same play. And the very first time, what'd they do? They sent Nix to the left and they pulled DeCastro and Pouncey around to the right. And he ran to the right for 45 yards because 3 linebackers all stepped to Nix. And all it took was one step in the wrong direction to where Pouncey and DeCastro could get around there and clip them off, and boom, he was off for 45 yards.
There you go.
Thanks for watching.
There were some strides in play calling, but there's also still room for improvement, I think.
It's almost like he runs out of it. It's almost like, he wants to mix some things up, but by the time they get to the fourth quarter, it's almost like, I used it all up. I just got to do the same old stuff.
Now, Dave, I'll ask you this because I was on last night with Brian on the Standard as a Standard, and we talked about this. From a coaching standpoint, you coached football. Why in the heck would you run a no huddle or even a muddle huddle, which they like to do to keep certain packages on the field in the first drive, see success with it, and then never visit again for the rest of the game?
I'm going to say, I'll tell you why they might have done it. I'm not saying I agree with it. They probably did it because they prepared for it, and they prepared for it right off the bat.
Well, that was the opening script, right?
And and I don't know, and I thought maybe that was their chance to say, all right, let's ease Rudolph into this, so we'll script it, and we'll do it as the opening drive, and we'll do it as the opening script, and it worked until the ball was not caught, intercepted, all that good stuff. But I don't know that they were prepared to, once again, did they run out of stuff? Were they not prepared to go beyond that? Were they not prepared to change up different plays out of formations and personnel packages once they hit a certain point? So I'm not saying that has to be the answer, but it's a possibility.
But that's pretty damning evidence if you ran out of stuff as a flipping NFL coach, as a coordinator. Like that would be like Keith Butler looking at Mike Tomlin saying, I got nothing, which I think might have happened before, but
I've had that I've got nothing moment before as a coach. I have. I had the paper in my hand and I turned to my assistant coach. It was our first game of the season, and and the head varsity coach wouldn't let us bring in the other teams until like a week later. So we had like no prep for our first game. And I had my offensive play sheet, and I turned to, and I had an offensive line that just couldn't block. We changed our whole offense after this game to accommodate them. I turned to my assistant coach. I said, I've got nothing on this paper that I think we could run right now. I said, I got nothing. That was the second quarter.
Now that's a different situation. But for an NFL coach not being able to do this, that's like me saying, honey, we've been together 13 years. I've run out of birthday ideas. Sorry. I don't know. Let's just go to Chuck E. Cheese because I can't think of nothing. But here's one, Dave. Jeff, okay. Let me throw this at. Maybe it's the fact that he's a quarterback's coach, and that's it. He's not an offensive coordinator. He's Ben's lackey.
He's comes the rant.
But no, I'm stopping at that. But
rinse, lather, repeat. Rinse, lather, repeat.
The other thing. And I'm glad he's listening or watching your shows, because thank goodness he's not watching mine. Because I'm not too nice to Randy. I mean, I'd love to have a soda with a guy. He seems like a great dude. I mean, I just don't want him squashing my hopes and dreams every week with unimaginative crap. Okay, enough said.
Yeah.
All right. My around the horn is less aggravated or agitated. Maybe that's a better word. The curious case of Sutton Smith is what I want to talk about today. And that is why the Steelers might have signed him for one day and then released him again. I have my own theory on it, and unfortunately, my Brian Switzer prediction is not going to come to fruition, unfortunately. But so here's the thing. James Conner practiced yesterday, and as Dave will enlighten us in a little bit, he did not practice today on Thursday, and now reports from Jerry Dulac of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette is that he is not going to be playing against the Rams on Sunday. Roosevelt Nix also did not practice today, correct, Dave?
No, Roosevelt Nix and Trey Edmonds.
Right. The running back depth chart has been decimated. Yes. And I think that my theory was that Sutton Smith was brought in to be an extra fullback in case they needed to bring him up if Roosevelt Nix was going to have to deal with that knee for a week. Now I think they said that fullback is not a concern right now. We need running backs. And so they drop Sutton Smith. They pick up Darren Hall, I believe, former Pitt product. And now he is on the practice squad and could very well be promoted for this game based on the fact that right now they have two healthy running backs on their roster in Jalen Samuels and he's got a hyphen in his name, but I don't know it. Dave, help me out. Brian.
Tony Brooks
James.
Oh, you guys said it together in unison.
We tried.
So good. So good. So, but still, that guy, whatever his name is, Tony Brooks, Frank Webb, something. He came.
He's available.
But so Ralph. Still, it's Ralph Frank. Okay. They had to make a move, and so I think that Sutton Smith was. It's so weird, they bring him back. I think a lot of people are like, hey, let's see what this guy can do. You're giving him a second chance. He was hurt most of training camp, but he was here for a day. It was good while it lasted. The curious case of Sutton Smith. I don't know what to think of that. Brian, what do you think of Sutton Smith?
I just found out, fellas. You just broke the news to me. Gosh, my hopes and dreams were just revived, and now they're smashed again. Sutton Smith is no longer on the team.
Well, I'm kind of upset and sad that Dave wrote that freaking article in the morning, and you're just finding out about it.
You know what? I have a job, guys.
So do I.
I know. I don't know. I mean,
well, what's more impressive is that I wrote that article in the parking lot of Walmart.
Nice. Very good.
Okay, you know what? Can I just jump in real quick? My son got an award at school for like October Student of the Month. Guess when I found out? It was just announced on Tuesday. I found out on Facebook. And I'm not joking. And I live with my family. I mean, it's just like I'm completely oblivious to everything around me right now. I'm lucky that I even know your names.
Well,
that's why we put them up there on the screen for you.
Okay, so that was our Around the Horn segment there. Dave, did you have anything to say about Sutton Smith? I didn't throw it to you. I forgot.
I think it was less about Sutton Smith and more about them being like, uh-oh. I knew when they signed him this morning, it was either Trey Edmonds they know is out or Conner had a setback. And unfortunately, I think it came about because it might even be both.
Yeah. Sadly. So it'll be interesting. We'll talk about that in the preview segment about the running back situation for the Steelers going against the Rams. I do like to take a minute now to talk about how you, the listener or viewer, can help this show grow and develop into something much bigger than what it currently is. We have a goal set for 5,000 subscribers by the end of this year. Lance aggressively said 6. I think 5 is a better, reasonable, realistic goal. I believe we're close to 4,400. We're not there yet, but subscribe to the channel. Go to youtube.com, search BTSC Steelers Radio, subscribe. But if you don't want to do that, I don't know why you wouldn't, because you'll get notifications every time we go live. You'll never miss a show. Make sure that you like the video. It's a simple thing. It's totally free. Just like the video, hit the thumbs up button. The more likes that we get, YouTube then uses their own algorithm and promotes that when people search for things like Pittsburgh Steelers. So every single like that you can give us is very much appreciated because it does help us grow. So as Lance always says, make sure you like the show, subscribe, and then tell a friend. If you know someone that likes the Steelers, send them a video, send them an audio link, and help us grow in that way. So there you have it. Now, Dave, I'm going to give you a little platform to talk about your meetup on Sunday at Heinz Field. So go ahead and talk about that. What you're trying to do.
Okay. Well, last time this is still all leading up to ultimately December 15th, where that is when we are going to do our even bigger, more official meetup with Brian and I, hopefully Tony, and even my brother who's been sitting in on Stat Geek for the last several episodes. That we'll all be around and that we're going to do for that. This was more of a test to see how things would work, is what I did the last time I was there. That's why it was a short little thing. So we're like, hey, let's see what we can do. So I'm going to go live from the stadium again, trying to find just some people that want to talk and be there and put their opinions out there about the Steelers, that are nice and rowdy and ready to go. And I would like people that are BTSC subscribers, listeners to the podcast, followers on YouTube, anybody who's at the game. I would love for you to have the chance to be there and be a part of it. So the biggest thing is we got to figure out where we're going to do it and what time. If you haven't heard earlier in the week, all you have to do, follow me on Twitter at STLR Superfandad. I'll put it up on the screen later. I know that's the longest Twitter handle ever. We've talked about this before. This was the Twitter's based off my email. No, my email's based off my Twitter. My Twitter was out before I even met you guys. So
Groovy, super hot dad.
Yeah. So
1983.
if you follow me on Twitter, if Jeff's on it, he'll retweet my tweet, but who knows when he'll get around to it.
Well, if you send me the text, it takes me.
I know. I'll send you the text. We're going to figure out where we're going to try to be. It's probably going to be in the what I call the upper concourse, not the Great Hall, but it's the concourse where you go up the escalators at the end of the Great Hall, where you're in the closed end zone, where it wraps all the way around the home side, all the way to the scoreboard. It's going to be on that level somewhere. And we're hoping to do it. I've got to do the inactives article before I can do that. So it'll be after 3:00 for sure. But we'll put it out there on Twitter of where we're going to be. We'll try to give you at least 10 minutes to get there if you can get that notification, so you can show up and be in the background and say hey and give your thoughts on what's going to happen in the game.
Sounds like a lot of fun. And yeah, go ahead, Brian.
You know what? I watched the last one. We were talking about this last night, Jeff. When you were before the Miami game, it looked so much fun, and there was so much spirit. And go ahead, hang out with Dave. It'll be whole lot of fun, and that'll build up to when you get a chance to meet the great Tony coming up in December. So this will be the build. We have to work you slowly to meet Tony.
There you go.
Now, if I put that over Brian's mouth, you wouldn't be able to hear him. But yeah.
Okay, so we did a couple of people that during our Around the Horn segment gave us a quick donation, which is a super chat feature you can use right where it has a comment bar to the right's a little $sign. You can donate any amount of money to the show. You don't have to, but you can. And it'll highlight your questions. I saved these. I'm going to get back to them. We had a question about Dez Bryant. Guys, do you think there was any way the Steelers would sign Dez Bryant? Brian, thoughts?
At this point, I don't think so, just because he's been out of the game so long, and it's been over a year. So yeah, I just don't. I think that ship sailed.
Dave,
the report I saw today is he's excited because he's within 2 weeks of being ready to play. So if something happens in the next 2 weeks, I mean, the Steelers only have 5 wide receivers. If something happens to one of them, but I don't know that he'd be the top guy on their list. I wouldn't be opposed to it, like the big conversation we had last week, because I think it could be low risk. It's not like you're picking up someone on waivers that you're responsible for their salary, even if you cut them and stuff like that. So I I'm not expecting them to, but if they did, I wouldn't be like, oh, that's a terrible move either.
I'll go with Mike Tomlin's response next. I don't think there's any way that happens. Johnny puts $2 in the tip jar. He says, BAD, you are my hero. So you have a friend in Johnny.
Well, thanks, Johnny.
Yeah, there you go.
That makes me feel good.
I'm glad.
Now, if you could just text my wife and tell her that I'm a decent guy, and that'll be nice.
All right, so let's go. What's the Stat Geek? That's up next. I had a little brain fart there. Sorry about that. Dave, go ahead.
Okay, well, I've got several different things here, but we'll try to move through them pretty quick. The one was talked about on the Stat Geek show, but I had to throw it out here because Lance Williams wants me to talk about it so bad all the time, and that is the Steelers' inefficiency in the red zone. And what I find interesting with that is it's kind of a this is bad, but this is good kind of scenario, both on offense and on defense. So when you look at the Steelers' red zone offense, they've been there. We're going to say 21 trips. We're not going to count the 22nd one, which was a kneel down at the end of the game against the Chargers. So out of those 21 trips, the Steelers have scored points on how many of them?
Say
points. Not touchdowns, just points.
Points?
Well, I mean, how many field goals do they have? They've got 12.
So not how many total points out of their 21 trips.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying they've got 12 field goals. So, I mean, you're probably looking at, let's just say 8 of those were in the red zone, possibly. So maybe about 4 touchdowns. So let's say about maybe 13.
I was going to say 12.
They've scored points on 21 out of 21.
Well, I'll be.
Yeah, they haven't turned it over in the red zone. They haven't gone for it on 4th down and failed. They haven't missed a field goal in the red zone. The problem is they've kicked 13 field goals and 8 touchdowns.
Sheesh.
So the problem is turning it into 7 and not just 3. So they don't have that many trips to the red zone. That's only just over 2.5 per game. So the good thing is but here's the math behind it. They're so concerned about making sure they get points. Think about it. If you go in there and 2 different trips, you just play conservative and see what you can do, and make sorry, I just got a text from Lance. I'm kind of worried about it. I don't want to read it. And you just settle for field goals twice. Well, that's fine. Well, let's say you go in 2 trips and you're going to attack and you score a touchdown in one and you turn it over in the other. You're still 7 points to 6 points. So I guess what I'm saying is if you're playing it so conservative that you're always settling for field goals, you're better off saying, I don't care if we turn it over half the time, if the other half the time we're scoring touchdowns. So that's interesting. So yes, that is correct, Ali. You are spot on there. Seattle does have 2 losses. Now on the defensive side, which I forgot to say, the Steelers are one of 2 teams. I said this Tuesday night. They're one of 2 teams that have scored every trip into the red zone, other than counting that kneel down. That meaning they haven't missed a field goal, they haven't turned it over on downs, they haven't had a turnover. And the only other team that has done that is the Ravens. But when it comes to the Steelers' defense, unfortunately, they've given up 15 touchdowns in the red zone this year, and 8 field goals on 28 trips. So they've given up much more touchdowns than field goals, which you want to improve that. But the Steelers also lead the NFL in red zone turnovers at 5. Now that is a turnover that the change of possession occurs in the red zone. So like even Minka Fitzpatrick's interception of Ryan Fitzpatrick at the 3-yard line was technically a red zone turnover because that's the point. Yeah. So anyway, so that's kind of good. Here's my question. How do you think the Steelers fare when they play a team that the other team is coming off their bye week, where they've had extra time to prepare for the Steelers? Let's look at this under the Tomlin era. It's happened 11 times. I'm not counting playoffs where the team had a bye with that regular season, team has a bye, and then they play Pittsburgh. How do you think the Steelers have done in those 11 games?
I'm going to say that they are 6-5.
I'm not even going to let Brian answer because Jeff's right. They are 6-5, and because Brian's about ready to tell me that Seattle has 2 losses. So, so yeah, the Steelers they're 6-5, so they do have a winning record. Now the other question with that is what about when the games are played at Heinz Field? They've had, I got to double check it here. 5 of those going into this year because that's what they're dealing with this week. Team coming off the bye, but they're playing in Pittsburgh. Under Mike Tomlin, the Steelers are 4-1. Whenever, even though the team's coming off a bye week, if they get them in Pittsburgh, they still do pretty well. Now that single loss, got to go back to this game yet again, was when they lost to a 7-0 Cincinnati Bengal team coming off of the bye, when they lost 16-10. Do you guys remember that game? In what year was that? I gotta double check it. In 2015.
Yeah, that's when Le'Veon Bell got hurt. Coming off the bye, November 1st.
Yes, that one. I was thinking of the one where he got hurt week 17. I was like, no.
That was the Vontaze Burfict hit on the sideline.
Yeah, yes. and standing over him. And
yeah.
Mm-hmm. But do you guys remember what really led to that loss? How about inside of 6 minutes, Ben Roethlisberger throwing interceptions on back-to-back passes?
Yep.
Where he threw an interception with just under 6 minutes. The Steelers were up 10-6, and the Bengals went down and scored a touchdown. And then they come back, and with 3 minutes left in the game, very first play of the next drive, Ben throws another interception, and then they get a field goal from it. So, and they still got down inside the red zone and had a chance to win it at the end and didn't do it. So that's the only time under Coach Tomlin that they've played a team where the other team was coming off the bye at Heinz Field and they haven't won the game. So that was just kind of fun.
That's a good stat there. Now, here's a $2 in the tip jar. It says, Dave, how's our defense ranked in 3rd and long? And that comes from Johnny.
Yeah, I did that before. Was that last week that I was talking about that in 3rd and long? I didn't go back and update it with the Colts information. So just because it was one of those things. I mean, it was a 3rd and long when they gave up the first down on the penalty late in the game against the Colts. But they're still I think they're still right around middle of the road like they were when we talked about last week.
Okay, very good. Brian went dark.
Oh, I'm here.
He's there. Okay. All right, so let's shift gears now and let's talk a little bit about this upcoming game. The Rams come to Heinz Field, like Dave mentioned, coming off a bye week. And it's one of those situations where this is kind of where the headline of this episode, the title of this episode, derived from. And that is that the Steelers are playing with quote-unquote house money. And house money is essentially if you're gambling and the house is saying, it's on us, don't worry about it. And you're just able to just roll the dice and you're able to put down big bills and say, it's not my money. What the hell do I care? Just take it risk. Just take risk is what essentially that means. Dave, you obviously feel strongly about this as you, I know Brian talked about it. He's going to talk about it in an article. We talked about it before we went on the air. Dave, what are your thoughts on the whole situation? You're on mute, Dave.
I am on mute, and Brian wasn't. That was part of the problem.
I put him on mute.
Oh, there's Brian. He's back. Yeah, this is the week for them. It's funny. It's because I want them to do this. I still don't believe it's what they're going to do. But this is the week. You're at home. You're underdogs at home. It's an NFC opponent. You've already won your last 2 home games, and you wanted to go 2-1 in that stretch at worst. So there, you've already got that. This is your game to just say, you know what? We're not supposed to win this. Let's just let it fly. Let's go outside the box. Let's do things we haven't done. I'm not talking about run Wildcat the whole time. I'm talking about let's fling the ball around. Let's take chances, because if there's ever a game to see if guys can step up in this situation, it's this one, because it is the, how do I say it? It's the basically it's the best possible loss you can take because it's an NFC opponent, it's a team you're not supposed to beat, and all of those things.
Yeah, if there is such a thing as a good loss, I guess this would be it. Brian, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, when it goes to the playoffs and it comes to tiebreakers, you're basically, if you have three out of conference losses. So if you end up losing to the Rams, the 49ers, and the Seahawks, who have 2 losses right now. So if you lose those games, it doesn't count against you in the playoffs. In the playoff race, if it's head to head, if you're as a tiebreaker. So you're looking at it. So if you're going up against say the Colts right now, you have the same record at the end, but the Colts are 4-0 against the NFC, and you're 1-3, then you're in better shape there because you have a better conference record.
Right. I agree 100% with what you guys have said, and I don't really think there's anything I can add to that. The one thing that does scare me, though, and maybe this is just a little bit of pumping up the media to an extent, is I got to watch about 5 minutes of Mason Rudolph's media availability today, and my gosh, does it seem like that team has put the handcuffs on that kid. And I say kid on purpose, and I say the handcuff thing on purpose because every single answer he was given was talking about, well, Coach Randy, he's always talking about we got to, protect the football. And the Coach Randy's always telling me that, we got to make sure that we think about the big picture and we can't turn the ball over. And Coach Randy says all the time that big picture is field position can sometimes win the game. And I'm thinking, my gosh, they are saying that this kid has so many things in his head about protect the ball, protect the ball, protect the ball. No wonder he's checking it down every time he gets a chance. He's probably scared to death to throw it down the field because every single coach in that room is saying, you can't do that. Don't risk it. Don't risk it. Where were these people with Ben Roethlisberger when he's thrown multiple picks a game, when he's leading the NFL in interceptions? I mean, why would the philosophy change that much? I'm not saying that you put the same amount of pressure and expectation on Mason Rudolph that you did with Ben Roethlisberger. But at the same time, I think that we've all said it before. Dave just said it, that you kind of got to let it loose at some point. And Mason Rudolph is a guy that threw the ball down the field a lot in college. Honestly, he's not bad at it, as many people think. It just comes down to, it seems like they are just really handcuffing the heck out of this kid in terms of what he can and cannot do. Dave, what are your thoughts on that? I don't know if you've got a chance to listen to that media availability yet.
I listened to one brief response, so I haven't heard the whole thing, but I did hear a little part of it. But I know exactly what you're saying, and that is, it doesn't make any sense to play it like that. They're just like, you know what? Go out there and do what you can do. Just go out there and why isn't he being told to just go out there and be the best Mason Rudolph you can be? That's the message that he should be hearing all the time. Not don't turn it over. Oh, don't take the chance. Don't do this. Let him go out and be him. Because guess what? If you're going to handcuff him this much, then how are you even going to know what you have moving forward? If Ben Roethlisberger comes back next season and you want to keep Rudolph around and you want to know, do we want to sign him after this in order for him to then take over when Ben steps away? You won't know what you have because you've never let Mason Rudolph be Mason Rudolph. You've turned him into this paralysis by analysis. What happened to we don't live in our fears? You are completely 100% living in your fears. That's all you're doing. Don't live in your fears. You are projecting your own fear onto this poor kid is in essence what the offensive coordinator is doing. But like I said, if we could call him back, that's what the quarterback's coach is doing. You're projecting your own fears onto him. And what are you doing? You're in essence setting it up for both of you to be failures rather than just letting him go out there and be him. Are you afraid that he's going to expose that you don't know what you're doing as a coordinator? Is that the problem? I don't know. I feel like we've switched spots on the screen.
What's that?
I don't know because
did we just hear Brian Anthony Davis's music? Is he coming down?
The broken glass. Sorry.
I'm revving up, baby. I'm revving up.
That's the thing. If you're just going to be inept at calling plays and everything else, and then the players are just going to have to step up and win games in spite of you as a coordinator, that's fine. But projecting your fears onto this second-year player, that's just ridiculous. And I'm sorry that it really got me fired up like that. But I mean, what a good coach does is bring the best out of a player, not force them to be their worst.
All right, Brian. Here's your chance.
Dave, I can't really say it better, but I'm going to try because you just got me fired up, and you are 1,000% correct in what you said. But let me answer one of Jeff's questions. I believe it was Jeff that said this when he was talking about what happens with Ben Roethlisberger. Are they going to tell Ben Roethlisberger what to do? Are they going to get on him for that? You know what? They're not, because you know what? They had somebody that did. His name was Todd Haley. Where's Todd Haley? He's gone. You know why he's gone? Because he stood up to Ben. That's the thing. Now, here's the thing with Mason Rudolph. He's a guy trying to get his job. He started 5-6 games in this league, and now every time he does something, he's going to worry about exactly what Dave said, worry about the wrath of the coaches. But guess what's going to happen on Thursdays? Randy Fichtner is going to go into the media like he did today and bust on him again. Tim Lester was the bus driver? No, it's Randy Fichtner, because he's the bus driver backing up on this guy over and over again. It's absolutely ridiculous. You don't do that as a coach. I mean, I said earlier I'd love to have a soda with Randy Fichtner. I think he's a good guy. But more than I think about it, no, soda revoked. I don't want to drink a Coke, a Dr. Pepper, or a Faygo with you, Randy Fichtner. You know why?
Because you want to throw it in his face.
You don't do that to your players. You're supposed to develop this guy. There's no development. He is your scapegoat. That's all it is. You know what happens at the end of the season if they don't make the playoffs? Hey, we lost Ben and we went with an inexperienced quarterback. That's your excuse. Hey, built an excuse. He's wearing number 2. That's what they're doing, and it's not fair. You're not developing a good player like this. You just have a guy living in his fears. Dave, when you said what happened to that phrase, exactly. I applaud you for that, because this is absolutely ridiculous. Now I'm fired up because you don't do this to a player. You are stunting his growth. He might as well smoke 4 packs of Luckies a day, because that would stunt his growth even less than what Randy Fichtner's doing to this guy.
It sounds like you know what Mason Rudolph needs to do. It sounds like he needs a little Johnny Moxon, Bud Kilmer,
Yeah, but Ben Roethlisberger's no Lance Harbor right now. He's not going to stick up because he doesn't care, because he thinks he's coming back. He is no Lance Harbor, and I'm really disappointed in that. And they wore the same number. They were both number 7. Come on, Ben, be more of a Lance. Stick up for this guy.
Yeah. Johnny Moxon was number 4, wasn't he? I think so.
Moxon was 4, but Lance Harbor was number 7.
That's right. You're right. All right, quick. Well, you guys.
Well, I want to say something else.
This is those
people that I completely disagree with, that scream about that they want to keep screaming about we want Duck. Do you want to know what? Is it going to be any different with him? No, it's not. Because guess what they're going to do with him if they have to go with him with more than one game? Handcuff the crap out of his play. So call for whoever you want, and that's why I keep saying I saw these players play for real when they let them play in the preseason, and they actually let them play. You're like, oh, well, they were going against different opponents and, guys that aren't on teams and blah, blah, blah. It's a completely different mentality and style. If you watch last week's tape, and then if you go back and look at, well, I don't know, week 2's preseason tape, anything like that, and compare this, you're like, wow, look at how he was doing back then. Why is he not now? Because they're killing him. They're killing him. They're cuffing him. They're killing him. I'm done.
I love this. This should be this is, where is it? Oh man, you guys are going to, here we go. Greg channeling his inner soup Nazi. No soda for you. No soda for you, Mr. Fichtner. No soda for you.
That's our new t-shirt.
I honestly can't say it better than you guys did. And there are times where I get as fired up as anybody It's a very unique situation that the Steelers find themselves in because, like Brian said last night on the Standard is a Standard, Randy Fichtner is who Ben wanted, and Ben's not there now, and so we, the fan base, and the Steelers as a team, are dealing with the repercussions of a non-Ben Roethlisberger quarterback dealing with Ben Roethlisberger's puppet. So we'll see. But let's progress through the show here, and let's talk about let's talk about matchups you're looking forward to. It can be any matchup: offense versus defense, special teams. I don't care. Dave, what's a matchup you're looking forward to this Sunday at 4:25?
Ooh, there's so many. Let's look at the matchup of the Steelers offensive line, whoever it might be, against one all-world best defensive player in the game, in my opinion, Aaron Donald, who is coming back to Pittsburgh, coming back to Heinz Field to play for his first time in his professional career. So it was interesting today how the report was they made some changes along the offensive line for practice, where it wasn't BJ Finney in at left guard with Ramon Foster looking like he's not going to play because he did not practice today because after being limited yesterday. So that is really bad for the concussion protocol. But they slid Filer down to guard and had Chooks at right tackle. Well, I say slid him to guard, it was guard on the other side. I don't know if they did that. Some people are like, oh, well, here's your starting. I don't know if that's it, or if they're like, hey, our only backup to the interior offensive line right now is Matt Filer. Maybe we should give him one practice where he's back at guard. So I don't know what they're thinking there, what they're going to do. But regardless, whoever they put out there and wherever Donald lines up, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle him.
Nothing against Aaron Donald. He is every bit as good as you described him. And if people don't know, you haven't watched the Rams play, he is literally a one-man wrecking crew.
And a physical specimen of a man.
Yes, he is. He will wreck a game plan. That's what TJ Watt called him. He's a game wrecker. He'll wreck the entire game. But Dave, in your opinion, and I know where Brian would go with this because one of the guys I'm about to mention is his boy. Wouldn't Zach Banner be the next tackle up and not Chooks at tackle? I mean, I feel like that would be a foregone conclusion. Chooks hasn't even been active this year.
Yeah, he was active last week because of Foster being out.
Right,
he was active a couple weeks ago just because there were 6 guys already ruled out before the game in Los Angeles. So I would think so too, but I think Banner is more of the left tackle. I don't know. I'd like to see Banner. I don't know.
He's both sides.
Yeah. I mean, he's technically a swing, but if they had their choice to where they would go long term, if they had to go with one or the other, I think that's what they do.
All right, Brian, what matchup are you looking forward to seeing?
Well, so individual matchups are sometimes tough for me because I might get the wrong guys. But so I'm going to go throw in the guy I'm looking at on offense. I think really the guy who drives this team on offense for the Los Angeles Rams is Cooper Kupp. And I really think that this is, I'm not comparing him to Edelman, but I'm comparing him to Edelman in the way that he can get 11, 12 catches just like that and tear you up over the middle. And so he's the kind of guy that I'm going to look at. So I'm looking straight at Mike Hilton. I'm looking at Cam Sutton, maybe Minka in there to help cover this guy and neutralize this guy. If they can do that, it's going to be a lot tougher because they've already lost a big threat in Brandon Cooks. So he is out for this game. I did think it was interesting that he traveled to Pittsburgh just to see the neurologist in Pittsburgh. I thought that was interesting. That shows a lot about the level of care once again in Pittsburgh. So that's great. But it could be anybody else in that secondary as well. I mean, it could be Steven Nelson up against him. So it just depends where he lines up. But as far as that goes, I think you neutralize Kupp, you do a whole lot better in this game. Robert Woods is a good wide receiver as well, but I'm looking at Kupp as being the guy that can shred them.
Now, for me, I was fully expecting for Brian to go in a different direction. And so I had kind of mentally prepared for another matchup that I'm looking forward to. I'm going to give you both. I fully thought he was going to say Jalen Ramsey. I mean, my gosh. I mean, Jalen Ramsey versus X, Y, or Z. this to me is where the Steelers offense needs to put Juju Smith-Schuster in the slot as much as possible. If Jalen Ramsey, if it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to be an eraser and take away one of their receiving threats, put him in the slot and see if they put Ramsey in the slot where I don't think he's as good. I'd like Juju in the slot against him as any slot cornerback in the entire NFL. If you want to do your damage, I think that's how you do it. That's a matchup I'm looking forward to seeing. But, Brian talks about this long list of, they don't have Brandon Cooks, but they still have Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, as you mentioned. And the one area of weakness on this Rams offense is their offensive line, especially the interior. I want to see the Steelers get after the quarterback. They have all season. I think there's only been one game where they only had one sack, maybe one or two. I know they had one against the Chargers. I'm trying to think the other one. Dave, do you know?
I think it's two. Because I thought they went every other game, so I think it was. I think they only had one against. I think they only had one against New England and one against San Francisco.
Okay, so there's three then, because they only had one against Phillip Rivers. They beat the crap out of him.
Yes,
but he only sacked him one time, and so they're going to have to be in the backfield. Right, it's just like we say all the time. You can't throw it deep if you don't have time, and so it's going to be up to Cam Hayward, Javon Hargrave, those interior players really getting some push and making life uncomfortable for that Los Angeles Rams offense. So there you go. There's some really good matchups to keep an eye on. We're going to try to press through, but with this game, the show's gone long, so we're just going to speed through things. Let's go to the fantasy focus for a little bit. We're only going to talk about players that we would start, not who we're going to bench. Dave, who's a player in this game that you would say start him?
Wow. Let's finally turn around and start James Washington. I feel a little, I don't know that he'll really bust out, but I've always been saying I'm not starting him until he shows me something. He gave me a glimpse last week. I'm afraid that if Juju draws the attention of Ramsey, then I think it's either Deontay Johnson or James Washington. It was a coin flip for those two. And since Brian tells me how much I hate Deontay Johnson, I'll say James Washington.
That's Jeff. Jeff's the one on that wagon.
Jeff didn't say anything. I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, Jeff's the guy. He's the guy who needles in there.
Go ahead, Brian.
You know what? I'm going to stick with Cooper Kupp. I really think that he's going to put up the points for the Rams, and they're going to score some points, even against a rejuvenated Steeler defense. Not that you want to pick the competition, but I think he's probably one of your best fantasy values in this game.
I'm going to go with two. I'll give you two. I'm going to say Vance McDonald is one, especially a good value pick at tight end. Most of the time when you have red zone woes, you can lean on a tight end to kind of get you through it. And Mason Rudolph has found him now 3 times in the red area for touchdowns. Last being obviously last week's touchdown. I don't think he only has 3 touchdowns on the season. And then second, I'm going to say start the Steelers defense because they might give up some yards, but they're tightening things up a little bit in the red zone, and they've been getting a ton of turnovers and sacks, which in fantasy football gets you points. I started them last week. I want to say they got me double-digit points, and they still surrendered 24 points on the game because they had a pick 6. They scored a touchdown. I'm saying to start them.
Jeff, we all started them. All 3 of us did.
No, did we?
Yes, I know. Okay. I wasn't sure if you did. I know Brian did because he was at least close to me for a little while before I pulled ahead of you guys. And now who's ahead? Now who's ahead in the standings, Brian, for the season?
You're up by 20. You're up by 20, Dave. But you know who's going to catch us all in the end? It's Jeff. He's going to catch fire.
I'm on the cusp. I'm getting close. I was in the lead going into the 4:00 games, and then I still can't believe that Aaron Rodgers completely crapped the bed against the Chargers.
I had Rodgers as well.
I had tons of players that were in the 4:00.
So did I.
I did too.
Any. Yeah.
But what was
my new strategy?
That was a better call. Yeah, me too. Because I'm so tired of being ahead after the first games and then looking at it like trying to hold on. I'd rather just try to come from behind. Sorry.
It's like opening all your Christmas gifts and seeing your sister has like this big stack and you're like down to a pair of socks and you're like, all right, I'm gonna watch her open all this stuff now.
Gosh, I know what that feeling was like, man. I used to remember that. I'd be like, I'm almost done. He's got all those freaking boxes. What the hell? Anyways, we have some super chats to get through here before we get to our predictions. Grayson says $4.99 the tip jar. This is from about 10 minutes ago. Been saying for a while the coaching staff has been holding this team back. The Steelers are too talented to have these dud seasons. What started off as a dud season is kind of rebounded. I mean, my goodness, it's I'm not saying the coaching is great, but it seems like for at least the time being, Keith Butler is kind of sitting on the high horse, and we all went off, well, you guys did, on Randy Fichtner in terms of his job as the offensive coordinator. So I wanted to make sure we got that in because he donated $5 to the show, and so we appreciate that big time. Let's get to our what's up, Dave?
I was going to say, I Brian was saying so with him wanting to play Cooper Kupp. It got me thinking. Have the Steelers given up 100 receiving yards to a wide receiver this season?
They have not to a running back.
I don't remember one that went over 100 against him.
No, I haven't checked tight ends. That could be different. But with wide receivers, they have not.
Huh.
And their two most yardages given up by two receivers on the season. The top two are both from week one. Was Philip Dorsett and Julian Edelman. They're the only ones that have had over 80 yards receiving against the Steelers from the wide receiver position.
That's good stuff. Good stuff. So, all right, that's fine. Let's get to some predictions time. Brian, I'm going to go with you first because you were on the show last night. You said I want to abstain and wait till Thursday. That's fine. Now's your chance. What is your prediction for this game?
My first prediction before we get to the game is that we have to stop promoting the fact that we're going to the Buffalo game, because if Randy Fichtner finds out, he's going to kick the hell out of me in the parking lot for everything I'm saying. So I just we need to lay low on that. My prediction for the Rams game, though, I'm looking at this. I have a really good feeling that the Steelers could win, but I also have that little sinking pit in my gut thinking it could go wrong. You guys aren't going to love me for this, but I'm going to say the Rams 30, the Steelers 26.
Which would also be a cover because the spread is 3.5 points. And that would also be the over of 44 points.
Okay. What are you?
I'm liking 26.
Yeah, he is. He's liking the 26. I was all ready with my prediction that I was going to do something where I didn't know if the Steelers would win, but they would cover. It could maybe be a 1 or 2 point game. And I had to throw that out the window. I have to go completely off the rails with this prediction. But I have to follow my algorithm. I have to follow the data. I have to go with it. And that will be, and I must actually look at it to make sure I get it correct, that the Steelers are going to have to win this game by a score of 42-17. Now, the reason they're going to do that is because every time I've gone to a football game with my brother, once a year for this will be the third year in a row since he moved back to the area, the scores have gone. In 2016, the Steelers defeated the Titans 40-17. And then in 2016, that was 2017. Then in 2018, the Steelers defeated the Atlanta Falcons 41-17. So going with that trend, the Steelers have been increasing by 1 point. They've been holding to 17 points. So there we go, 42-17. 3 defensive touchdowns is what it's going to take to do that, because Randy Fichtner is not going to let them score 42 points.
I like it. And
I love it.
I like what Wes says.
It's completely bizarre, but I love it.
Did he just say 42-17?
Hey, I hope you're more right than I am.
Now, if you guys think that I actually believe, that's another thing. But I got to follow the data. I got to go with the data.
Yeah, you're a stats guy. As for me, if you listened to the show last night, I did pick the Steelers to win. I did not actually have them as winners when Lance and I went about look at this 3-game homestand and said, what are they going to be when it's all said and done? But the more I think about it, Brian, you mentioned it, there's something in my gut that says this might be the turning point for this team. If they can win this game, you sweep all these 3 home games, you win 4 in a row, you're going into a big game on Thursday night. Man, I mean, you'd be 5-4. You completely dug yourself out of that hole that you were in at the beginning of the season. Tremendous. I can't remember what my prediction was from last night. I think I had the Steelers scoring 30, and maybe it was like 30-27, 24. I think it's going to be
something
higher.
like that. All I remember is the Seahawks have 2 losses when you guys talk.
That's true. Not only does he not listen to our shows or read our articles, he doesn't even listen to us when we're on the same show together. So that's the quality production that Brian Anthony Davis brings to these fine establishment. So, all right, we'll see how things play out. To give you all a little bit of a heads up, what's coming up at the rest of this week, and then really next week is going to be unique because of the Thursday night game. So the rest of this week, someone's going to be giving you I said it tomorrow night. I think Lance is asking for a reprieve as he's now a proud grandfather. We'll see if we can make that happen. And then obviously on Saturday will be the burning question with Dave, I believe. Dave, it's your turn. Yep. The Steelers,
I got to figure out how I can bring up something about Randy Fichtner.
I'm sure you'll find a way. Then on Sunday, obviously after the game, Lance and I will be there for the Steelers post game. Then on Monday, this is where things get dicey. So the hangover stays the same. Tuesday is probably going to be the Stat Geek. Didn't we say, Dave? Didn't I, when I texted you the rundown, didn't I say that the Stat Geek would stay the same?
Nah, you told me you were going to kick me to after the game, to like Friday or Saturday. This is what you said. No, it doesn't matter. I know that there's a possibility that this show might be on Tuesday.
Yeah. We'll see if that works. And
you're going to keep the standard on Wednesday, but I think that kind of is going to. We'll have to see what Grandpappy Lance is going to. We got to figure out what he's going to be called. Whenever you become, you got different names for grandpappies. We got to figure out what he's going to be so we can use it accordingly. But
Pops, I like
Pops.
I can see him being a Pops. Yeah.
I'm a Pirate fan from way back. Pops Stargell. Pops is a great name.
So that it's kind of going to have to come down to that. So
okay.
Don't forget, we will be going live before the game.
That's right, too. So that's another reason why like this video. If you've watched this far, listened this far, like the video, subscribe to the channel. God bless you for watching all of this. And make sure that you tell your friends, and it's important. So, Brian, anything to say before we call it a show?
No, let's just do this. Let's prove me wrong. And let's keep this going. This is a possibility of great things coming up. So you win this one. I think you're Golden Grams.
Nice. Dave, anything?
I do have something. I had someone, one of our listeners, unfortunately bailed out on me, who was buying my tickets to the Browns game on the 1st of December. It's a 425 game at Heinz Field. So if anyone out there is interested in tickets to that game, they are lower level tickets. Just reach out to me. You can email me, go into any of my articles on BehindTheStiltCurtain.com, and my email's right there at the top. Or if you followed me on Twitter, it's the same email, but at gmail.com.
My birthday's December 3rd. Birthday gift for Brian.
Hey, I'm taking you to the 15th. Yeah, we might have gone on the 1st if I would have known about it at the time.
Let these guys buy for me.
Yeah, there you go. Here we go. Here's the deal. Anyone out there that wants to buy both tickets to take Brian, we'll send Brian with you.
That's a punishment. All right. So that's been a good show, guys. Thank you for your time. As Lance always says, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe. We'll see you next week for another episode of the Steelers Preview.